Hello there ladies and gents, welcome back once again to AndyManCam's Garden Garage. Today I'm going to be fitting this Scottoiler eSystem, as well as hopefully this Scorpion dual injector, onto this Honda CB1000R. So grab yourself a cuppa, let's get on with it. Now I think few would deny that Scottoiler is the name that has become synonymous with chain oilers for motorbikes. So when Scottoiler reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to test out their top of the range eSystem 3.1 on my Honda, I obviously grabbed at the chance. The eSystem uses a very similar reservoir that you will have seen in other Scottoiler systems, but it also has a completely digital control unit which automatically calibrates and controls the oil flow with a bunch of settings and things that you can actually control on the fly without having to twiddle with dirty knobs and things on the reservoir here. So we're getting ultimate control, ultimate ease of use. Let's see if we can get ultimate ease of installation. In the box here we've got the reservoir itself, we've got the control unit, and then hidden underneath there is a bottle of blue oil. This is stuff that's meant from 0 to 30 degrees centigrade, so perfect for my climate up here in Northern Europe. There's the cabling attached to the control unit, clear piping to deliver the oil obviously, along with a nozzle on the end to deliver the oil if for whatever reason the Scorpion doesn't want to go onto my bike. There's a bunch of fitting hardware. We've got the stopper that goes onto the reservoir itself and through which you can also refill the oil, the obligatory Scottoiler sticker, a flow control valve, and I think this also stops air from leaking in the system in the other direction, fitting hardware for the control unit, and the gubbins which will enable us to cleanly fill the unit from the bottle without having to rely on funnels and all that kind of nonsense. The indispensably dispensable instructions, relying on ideograms and plonkograms to tell me how to fit this to the bike, and last but not least, the obligatory cable ties. Hooray! No installation is complete without cable ties. So the first thing to do is to figure out where all this stuff is going to go on the bike. Now when I fitted the Scottoiler to my Versys in the first place and then also my Yamaha later on, I installed those onto the framework of the bike so it was all tucked away and also accessible from the outside. But what's different here of course is that the Honda has no tubular framework. There's actually no obvious place for me to fit this. I think that's probably a bit too flat and it's hanging out there in the middle of the breeze. Attaching it to the luggage rack there is going to be an absolute horrible eyesore. So with that in mind, and also bearing in mind the fact that this is a really quite good looking bike and everything is pretty tidy and looks good where it is, I'm actually going to stick this under the seat. I'm thinking right about there. We've got a good bit of angle to make sure we're going to get enough oil flow, plus there's a handy little cutout in the framework here ready for this to go on. I would have preferred to have put it on this side because there's two mounting points potentially for it to be stuck onto, but it doesn't fit. It does of course sadly mean that when it comes to refilling, that nozzle is kind of going to be tucked out of the way. But thankfully with the cradle being the way it is, I can just rotate this, bend the nozzle around, and refill my oil, and then twist it back into place. Unless, if I pull this loom out of the way, this is the accessory power socket as far as I know. I can tuck that forwards away from the fuse box, and then I've freed up a bit of space here to have the Scottoiler come a little bit further into the gap here. Yeah, that's much better. Now I can get access to this without worrying about any twisting nonsense. Might have to move the USB cable from the Heeltech Thunderbox out of the way though. For that to go there, I'm going to have to put a screw through this and then into that post there, which as far as I can tell is actually made specially for screwing something into. God knows what accessory that might have been, but in this case it's going to be a chain oiler. Sadly it looks like there's no screw that's going to do that job in the kit, so I'm going to have to go and raid my stores. There we go, that looks like the perfect screw for the job. Get the bracket in place. Looks like the hole is going to be about there. If I wanted to be particularly anal I could drill it, but instead I'm just going to be lazy and use a self-tapper. Right, so now that's poking through the bottom. And that is in, so there we go, phase one complete. Pop the oiler into the bracket and that's good to go. Now apparently you need to make sure that this cable coming out the bottom here is pointing directly downwards to make sure everything is optimum functional abilities. And I can now move on to the next phase. Now the idea is that the control unit goes somewhere around the handlebars so that you can have easy view of your oil levels, the rate of flow. But I'm kind of thinking, once again, with this bike, everything here at the front is relatively clean and tidy. I don't know if I really want to have another great big display up the front here kind of crowding everything. So I think for this bike, I'm going to try and maybe put this at the back end as well, hidden away. So all I need to do if I want to change the settings or something is to pop the back seat off, change my settings here with the controls, pop the seat back on. For the intended purpose of fitting this onto the brake lever, there is a bolt in there especially which you would replace this with, and it has a nice wide flange on it, especially to give you a good hold on the bracket there. But for this job, I've got another self-tapper with a nice big flange on it as well. I'm going to use a spacer just to give me some space underneath the thing to put all the wiring and stuff. Screw that onto the other post here in the seat area. So that is on. Gives me a nice platform upon which to mount the control unit. Lovely. Unravel the wiring here. We will see that the cabling for this at the end splits into two. This piece will connect into the actual oiling reservoir, and this other bit then heads off, connects to the battery of the bike. First off, I need to take some alcohol, give the back of the control box a clean. There are actually isopropyl wipes in the kit here, but I'm going to save them because I want to use them when I'm fitting the sticky pads for holding the oiling hose. Same for the surface upon which it's going to mount, because then also in the kit is this little sticky pad you can then stick onto the bracket there. Peel the back of that off and then attach the control unit. A bit of pressure. There we go. Control unit is in place, ready for the wiring to happen. I've got a whole bunch of wiring and connectors and things to deal with, and obviously this is going to have to get connected under the front seat, so that needs to come off. Here for a little bit more tidiness, that loom that I poked out of the way, tuck in there next to the fuse box. So the first thing that needs to happen is these wires need to connect up to the battery. Now it is also possible I could connect them to the Heeltech Thunderbox that I've got tucked away in there, but I'm pretty sure in the depths of my mind I read somewhere that it's better if the control unit is connected to power all the time. With that in mind, I'm just going to connect directly to the battery. They have been kind enough to fit spade connectors on there, open-ended ones as well, so you don't even have to completely undo the battery terminal bolts. You can just slide them in underneath. And there's another good reason not to connect it to the Thunderbox. If you cut these ends off, you actually invalidate your warranty. Can't see why that would be, but there you go. We come through here underneath this great big loom. The cable is into the right area. Connect up the negative first, because if you connect up the positive first and then touch the negative anywhere on a bare piece of framework, you'll end up with a short, and you could then have some blown fuses on your hands. Cable back a bit, the bare minimum flapping around here in the breeze. There's the positive. Oh, and the display has sprung to life. There we go. Telling me that we currently have ambient temperature of 20 degrees centigrade and there's no oil in the reservoir. Concerns me a tiny little bit that that's going to be on the whole time, but we'll see what kind of an effect that has. And obviously it's saying there's no oil in the reservoir, partially because the reservoir itself isn't connected, but partially because once you've filled the oil, you have to reset it. There isn't actually a sensor in here that tells the thing how much oil there is. What it does do is once you've filled this up, you reset the unit, and then this knows how much has been pumped through, just like the fuel injection system in the bike. So it looks to me like there's a fair bit of space in here. We could definitely stash some cable there rather than have it all poking around in our storage space. Pull this all the way through to the front. So obviously there's shed loads of wire here. It looks a bit excessive right now, but the idea is it's supposed to go from potentially the very back of the bike where the reservoir is mounted all the way through all of the various conduits and pipes and holes and gaps, and then come to the front on the handlebars so that you can read the display on your handlebars. But as I've mounted it under the seat, we've got all of this excess cabling. Okay, so with all of that poked through here, wind it together nice and tidily, tidily, wrapping the cable together tiger lily, and then use one of the shorter cable ties just to keep that all nice and tidy together. Tuck that bundle of cables neatly into that little gap and bung the diagnostic connector in the hole in the middle. Lovely. That's much better than having a big coil of cables here at the back. So now I can fill this with M&Ms and Snickers bars instead. Okay, now this bit coming from the reservoir connects up to this bit coming from the control box, which I'm going to have popping down underneath here. So they connect up like that, and then all of this excess, which is very conveniently heat shielded in case you happen to mount this anywhere near the engine, into this little cable channel. And there we go, that is neatly tucked in there. With all the wiring out of the way, we can get on with the next task, which is to get the oil delivery hose from the reservoir down here to the rear sprocket. And before I start, because I'm hoping to be able to use the Scorpion dual injector, I can actually take off this little nozzle bit and the bit around there to make this a bit easier. Because on the Scottoiler website, it actually says that the dual injector isn't compatible with the Honda CB1000R, but the thing is it only lists the model before this one, the SC60, so we'll have to see if this one is different enough that it might actually work. Also I hope I've got enough hose to get all the way back here. Could be tight. Right, anyway, first job, which is going to be easier with this out of its cradle, is to poke the hose as far onto the end of the nipple as possible on the top of the reservoir. There we go, that's not going any further. Reservoir back into its cradle, and now this hose I'm going to run down this cable channel down beside the battery, second thoughts, it might actually be much easier to put this nozzle back on because it gives me a stiff pokey bit to get into my holes. Behave yourself. There we go. Just poked out the bottom corner. I suppose it was a bit short. I could always just run it straight down there, couldn't I? Like that. Pull it nice and tight. Stick it around there. Oh, of course, I'm only joking. If it's not obvious to you why that's a problem, maybe don't go into mechanics, eh? You need to go around the front pivot point of the swing arm, or very close to it, because this whole thing is going to be jumping up and down. So if this hose was there, getting shorter and longer all the time, it's definitely going to break. So I'm going to then loop this over that main wiring loom there, stick a cable tie around it. Not super tight, just enough to just hold it in place, and that'll allow me to have just a little observation window so I can see at this point if there's oil flowing, if there's any air bubbles or anything in the system. Next up, I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with the tutorial system that I had on before this, and I'm going to run behind this little clip here so that this cable can actually be holding my hose in place. I do like to keep my hose in order. Then I'm going to go around the the front of the swing arm where it pivots. Of course, visibility is becoming somewhat problematic. Well, there we go. I'm happy to see there is plenty of hose to get all the way back to the sprocket. And then this hose needs to be fixed to the underside of the swing arm here. So, first off, I'm going to give all this a bit of a clean. That's going to be a job that you don't have to watch. I'm just going to attack it with some of these Petex Reinigungstücher. These things are brilliant. They'll clean anything off of anything. Even WD-40, I'm told. But anyway, I'll see in a minute when it's all nice and clean. So everything in there is about as clean as I can get it. And now all I need to do just to finish the job off is take one of these isopropanol cleaning tissues. Oh, it smells like being at the doctor's. Give that surface at the front a proper good rubbing. And also here at the back. So now out of the kit I can take two of these little hose clip jobbies, and I'm going to put one at the front, so that's that peeled off, connected to the hose to start with. I have a bit more hope because it's not going to fall on the floor if I drop it. That is in place. Give it a nice hard push to make sure it sticks properly. Pull the hose through a bit. I'll leave a little bit of slack because I just want to have a bit of allowance for movement of the swing arm. So then I can take the second hose clip. Once again, clip that onto the hose to give me a fighting chance if I drop it. And I'm going to put this one right about there at a slight angle, because after that I'm then going to bring the hose underneath this swing arm chain guide thing. And I'm going to poke it through here where the chain guide is quite slack. That's going to protect the hose from the chain. And you're going to take another alcohol wipe. Give this spot here a wipe. Okay, so with that spot well and truly grease free, seeing as how we've got 4 hose clips in the kit, might as well use 4 hose clips. Once again, good firm push down, make sure it's stuck as it's going to be. And that's the hose clipped in. Everything still nice and tight. And last hose clip right by there. Hose clipped into place. Lovely. And from above, you can barely see that it's even there, except for that ugly little white bit that's poking out. I think I can get over that. So now I need to get into this area to see if I'm going to be able to fit this fine little piece of equipment, which is the dual injector, which gives us the ability to have oil delivered to both sides of the sprocket. But to do that, I'm going to have to get this shark fin off first so I can see what I'm dealing with. And that is disgustingly dirty, as is behind it. So I'm just going to give this all a quick clean, and as if by magic, everything is clean and shiny and silver again. So now we can take a look at the dual injector. The standard idea is that you would stick this piece onto the swing arm somewhere, and then this bit bolts in through the back, and that then gives you your dual injection onto the sprocket. And of course you can trim these bits off if you want, so you've got 3 different options for the spacing that you would have between the dual injector and wherever you mount it to. As far as I can see, my options are somewhat limited actually. Potentially bolt it onto my shark fin thingy here. I think that could actually work. I have poked 4 little holes through the shark fin thingy here on the horizontal face there. So now if I plonk the dual injector on that, I can actually use some smaller cable ties, which incidentally were not in the kit. And that is pretty firmly mounted onto that shark finny bit. And now hopefully plonk this back into place. The shark fin is now holding and mostly hiding the dual injector, and the little dual injection nozzles are nicely on the ridge of the sprocket there, it's worked out beautifully, so that's very, very good. All I need to do now is clip this bit of hose out, put the hose from the dual injector in, coming to approximately there, connect the end of that hose onto the spigot on the little connector on the end of the dual injector, and there we go, that is connected. The system is almost complete. But of course now, we need to get some oil in there. Come to the reservoir itself, pop off the little nozzly lid thing, fill it with oil. There we go, that's about as full as I need to have it right now. Put that back on. Now that it's full, we need to prime the system. Also bearing in mind that in the kit is this thing. This is the check valve, and I need to put this somewhere in the system between the reservoir and where the oil comes out. And what this does is it stops the oil from running out through siphoning when the pump isn't pumping, so the system can't drain itself through gravity. I'm going to put it in here out the way where I can see that it's okay, but also it's not going to bother anything. So what I need to do is to push a button to turn on a unit, and then push the menu button to the left. Again to go through to the boost, and I push that, and now it should prime the system for 5 minutes. Oh yeah, I can feel the pump working, so it must be working the oil through the system right now. Come on, oily, oily. Oh, come on, Scott, do stop fooling around. It's taken quite a while, but obviously it's working the air bubbles and things through the pump because everything's dry. But the clicking has just changed to a thudding, and now it's actually spurting a little bit of oil out the end, so I think at any minute now, the fireworks are going to start. Oh, here we go, it's on. The instructions actually say to put the hose on after the oil starts dripping out of the spigot on the end of the reservoir, but it does show that a bit of patience, it works this way as well. There it goes under there. Now I just need to wait for it to arrive here. Oh. Looks like I've been waiting for a long time because it's stopped on the priming. So once the 5 minutes is up, it switches itself off, so there we go. You may have to reactivate the boost for a full prime. It depends how long your pipe is really, doesn't it? But then so much in life depends on how long your pipe is. Oh, here it comes, my little observation window here at the top. And here it comes down in the space where I want to put the valve. So come back up to the top here, push the set button to stop the boost. The oil has now stopped moving, exactly the point where the oil is. Cut that hose, and then the valve itself has a tiny little arrow which quite naturally points in the direction of flow, so I need to make sure that that arrow is pointing downwards, and then put one end into the hose as far as it will go, and the other end into the other end of the hose. Once again, as far as that will go, nice firm fit, and then I'm going to cable tie that to this cable here just to make sure that it doesn't jump around, jump up or get down. And then go back up to the top, push a button to turn the system on again, boost, and there's the oil now coming through the valve and carry on down the rest of the pipe. Here it comes underneath the swing arm, through the join between the hose and the dual injector, into the dual injector itself, and then boom, onto the dual injector, although for some reason it's only coming out of one side. As I've taken the shark fin thingy off, the dual injector stuck to it, and it looks like this nozzle is just blocked, so you can actually just pull that out, stick something long and thin through it like a needle or a piece of wire. There we go, that is all clear. And also, should it ever come to it, in the kit with the dual injector are 2 spare nozzles which you can cut to length. They're massively long, aren't they? And also in the Scottoiler kit itself there's another 2 spare nozzles. Check that's working on both sides. The bottle there to drip into. Boost. There we go, now dripping from both ends of the dual injector. Refit the shark fin. And there we go, we've got oil coming out of both sides of the dual injector. And there we go, that is the Scottoiler eSystem V3.1 fitted to my Honda CB1000R. Hopefully that's going to give me many more thousands of even more worry-free chain oiling. I'm really looking forward to getting some miles under my belt without having to worry about cleaning or oiling the chain. And also watch out in the future sometime for a far more in-depth review of this unit once I've got a few more thousand miles under my belt, and I can tell you how I've gotten on with it, what I do and what I don't like about it. And that's that. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting. If you had, please do the good thing and give it a like. If you haven't, give it a dislike. Either way, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you did or didn't like. Any questions about the unit, any questions about the bike, and I'll do my very best to get back to you. In the meantime, I've been AndyManCam. Keep yours shiny, and I'll see you out there. Ta-ra.